So in 2018, a former pageant queen, Miss Arizona, Miss Erika stumbled into the brand new Turning Point USA office in Phoenix, Arizona. While she was there, she very quickly bumped into Charlie Kirk, who then flew her to New York City for her job interview at a burger joint, a restaurant called Bill's Burgers. At which point during the job interview, Charlie Kirk said, "Forget the interview, forget the job. I actually think I'm going to date you," because that's super professional, but that's what happened. Erika completely jumped at the chance to date Charlie because he was already anointed by the billionaire class that funded and controlled Turning Point USA as the person that was going to be the next president of the United States.
Welcome back to my channel, you guys. Welcome if you are new here. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe for more. Help me out. Go ahead and hit that like button if you like anything that was shared on this channel. I'm a small channel growing in the rankings. Help your girl out. All right, I really want to assess this video, you all. It went viral on TikTok and is primarily talking about Erika Kirk, the Charlie Kirk assassination. You know, I'm like most of us. We're watching the Candace Owens podcast. We are assisting with the investigation of what really happened to him. It was just such a public ritual that took place, and many of us were affected. And so I really want to look at this video because it's tracking in my spirit as very credible, very credible. So I want you to let me know what you think. Stay tuned.
God knows 31 reasons you were called to be a woman of God, virtuous woman he needs. God knows 31 reasons. 31 reasons why. God knows 31 reasons you were called to be a woman of God.
Now, as the world continues to investigate what really happened to Charlie Kirk, we're 6 months in now on what happened to him, and because obviously what our government system has presented is complete garbage, is complete utter nonsense, and anybody buying into that, you are and have been living up under a rock. And I often as I'm watching Candace Owens podcast and how she has allowed the world to all come in and we all work together on really unveiling what has really actually happened with him. And as she's also going through the Erika Kirk background series, right? I ponder and think to myself, how much of this did Charlie Kirk really know about? I know so often we want to paint him in this innocent picture, you know, he was innocent, or maybe he was just a, innocent bystander. He didn't know all of these things were going on. But I'm thinking to myself, you marry somebody, I would assume, as smart as he is, and he was, that he would have known to look into her background, who her ties were, all of those types of things. And so I want to do that in this video. I want you all to take a listen to this video. It is very interesting. The gentleman in this video, I believe he goes by Mark based on his TikTok. And he says that he is a billionaire son, right? And I'm assuming he is related to a Chris Bisakakis, which is the current CEO and president of Airbus of America Incorporation, based on what I found online. And he is really jumping into what he believes the motives and intents were of Charlie and Erika Kirk. Listen to this.
So about a year ago, I was brutally canceled off the internet for having a billionaire father as well as political connections. But tonight, I'm going to use that privilege to expose what really happened with Erika Kirk. Because once you understand how these elite circles actually operate, the entire mystery around her becomes incredibly obvious. So take a seat, grab a bag of popcorn, because I might get deleted for posting this. So in order to fully understand what happened with this crazy bitch, you need to understand the fundamentals of politics themselves. So politics operate very much like a social club with a social hierarchy. So at the very top, there are the billionaires who write 9-figure checks to the puppet class, also known as politicians, who in return give the billionaire class undying loyalty on the issues that matter to them most. Now, the most important thing for you to drill in your to really understand the story is that you may look at a President Obama, for example, and think that he is at the top of the social pyramid. That is absolutely not true. When there are these private dinner meetings with billionaires and with past presidents or potential future presidents or even a current president, they're at the very bottom of the fucking If you were to compare it to a social hierarchy in a high school, for example, the billionaire is the superintendent of the entire school board. And a President Obama, for example, is like the president of student council. He actually has no power over the school whatsoever. It's completely performative. Every single time you've ever voted, you are really voting for someone that was handpicked for you by a billionaire who doesn't want to run themselves because they are busy ruining the planet. And honestly, being a politician is seen, as I said, in these social circles, at these dinner parties, as a very lowly job. So in summary, every single person who has made it to the level of a vice president or a president is nothing but a billionaire's.
Now, I'm going to pause it right here because it's very interesting. I'm like, wow, to consider what goes on in various other communist countries where you hear about who they are electing or who is ruling over them. It doesn't matter who they vote for. It's just basically being selected. And to typically learn what he just mentioned, that, hey, these folks are being pre-selected for us by billionaires, right? And so we're just voting for people that have already been pre-selected. So you mean to tell me the primaries, these so-called debates, all of this is all made up, and it's just a facade, right? It's just fake. It's fraudulent. It's already just basically been pre-planned. I really am inclined to believe that. I really am, because as I think about, the position that a lot of these folks are in and how AIPAC and the politicians have taken so much money from AIPAC, it makes sense. And then I'm a person who has run for office and have been in these circles where, lobbyists and different agendas are being implemented, and, folks are whispering in your ear on what they want you to do, who they want you to meet. It makes sense. It becomes more and more clear. So I'm going to let you all listen to the rest of this. Yeah, we're going to get into it.
So then this brings us to the fundamentals needed to understand the story of Charlie and Erika Kirk. So in 2018, a former pageant queen, Miss Arizona, Miss Erika Franzfey, stumbled into the brand new Turning Point USA office in Phoenix, Arizona. While she was there, she very quickly bumped into Charlie Kirk, who then flew her to New York City for her job interview at a burger joint, a restaurant called Bill's Burgers. At which point during the job interview, Charlie Kirk said, "Forget the interview, forget the job. I actually think I'm going to date you," because that's super professional, but that's what happened. Erika completely jumped at the chance to date Charlie because he was already anointed by the billionaire class that funded and controlled Turning Point USA as the person that was going to be the next president of the United States. This was not something that was a secret. This was not something that was implicit. This was something that was explicit in several conversations. Everybody knew that Charlie Kirk one day would run to be president, and it was a running comment, a running joke that Erika Kirk would one day be the first lady. This was her life goal, and this was the plan, and the only reason in 2021 she married Charlie Kirk. She did not marry Charlie, she married the trajectory of the presidency and proximity to power, which is what she always wanted. Erika Kirk was never a stay-at-home wife. She was the operator. She hosted the donor dinners, she schmoozed the billionaires, she sealed the checks, and she ran all of the events. This is documented. Charlie was nothing but the face. He was the schmuck, the puppet that went to university to embarrass college kids, to then clip them on social media and raise money for his political campaign disguised as a charity. That's all it ever was. And Erika was the one that upkept and fostered the relationships with the billionaire class. The agreement for them was very simple. Do what you're told, ride the youth wave to the White House, and then become president and first lady of the United States. But things didn't go quite according to plan, because somewhere along the line, Charlie Kirk grew the tiniest little piece of a spine. So in 2024, Charlie began defecting on some issues that were very important to the billionaires that owned him, specifically issues regarding foreign policy. The donors began to panic that their puppet was defecting on the only issue that actually matters to them, so they attempted to appeal to him through the only lever of control they had left, which was his wife. Erika then began pestering Charlie every single night, which put immense strain on their marriage. Support the war, do what you're told, you're ruining everything that we built together, and it actually got to the point where this is documented that a priest had to be called to pray over their collapsing marriage, which I believe detonated the night of September 9th, the night before Charlie was murdered. Erika herself admitted on national television that at 2:30 in the morning, she urged Charlie to sleep alone in their daughter's room so he could rest better before Utah. In the morning, Charlie grabbed his ring and his necklace from the bathroom and left for this huge, very important event without saying goodbye to his wife. It's been reported that shortly before his assassination, he messaged one of his friends saying, "It feels like it's over." A lot of people interpreted this as him talking about his life, but I think it's very obvious he was talking about his marriage. I think the night of September 9th, there was a fight, and Charlie and Erika decided that they would be getting a divorce. Now, I believe the only explanation that makes any sense is around the same time of Charlie messaging his friends that it's over in reference to his marriage. Erika also messaged the donors saying it's over, not only in reference to her marriage to Charlie, but in reference to all hope being lost that he would ever come back to their side politically, because he literally texted other people that he would be leaving the Israel cause. Now, from the donor's perspective, the looming divorce between Charlie and Erika not only could represent the end of Turning Point USA from an optics perspective, would be absolutely catastrophic, but also represents the fact that the very last string on their puppet, which was Erika, is gone. So they had no choice but to do what the mob does when you don't listen to them after you take their money, which is to get rid of you. And we all know what happened next. Conveniently, a 22-year-old from 142 yards away with the best shot in the entire world got rid of Charlie just in time to save Turning Point USA and anoint the new CEO, which is, of course, Erika Kirk. Just in time, right before Charlie was able to announce the divorce or the fact that he was leaving the cause. Nobody in the history of political assassinations has ever acted as bizarre as Erika Kirk. And I think that thing we're all registering as inauthenticity is actually guilt. Not only did Erika Kirk immediately accept the lone gunman narrative that doesn't make any sense for a multitude of reasons, she actually scolded the public for demanding answers and for being skeptical. The only reason she's not demanding answers is because she knows exactly who did it and why. Within 72 hours of the assassination, the domain Vance Kirk 2028 was purchased. Erika immediately sprints to take the throne of her dead husband by becoming CEO of Turning Point USA, and publicly forgives the shooter on camera before we can even actually establish if he really was the killer or if he acted alone.
Let me interrupt this video to share with you about my new book, Fall of Woman, Becoming the Woman God Called and Not What the World Expected. This is my personal memoir. This book, the Lord allowed me to write on behalf of you. Every woman that is tired of pretending and want to expose the lies and limitations the world system has placed on your life. God has allowed me to begin to write this book, and the chapters begin with stripped for glory, built for battle, dying to become, are just to name a few. And if you are a woman that is wanting to break through and break the chains off of your mindset and the limitations and the pressures, you want to grab this book. The link will be in the description box. Let's become together.
You believe that? You are a it. And just this week, the Orange Puppet appointed her to sit on the exact same seat on the U.S. Air Force Academy Board that Charlie once had, advising on foreign policy. The very foreign policy that created the emotional turbulence in her marriage with Charlie, leading to a divorce, and also the same foreign policy that ultimately got him killed. 2028 is already written. You can expect to see her name on the VP shortlist. There is a reason they are marketing her as the widow that overcame tragedy, and Erika is finally getting what she married for all along.
Now, all of this is very interesting to say the least, because what I will say is that anybody that begins a business or organization or nonprofit and you begin to take large sums of money, and we're talking millions upon millions of dollars from individuals, you know there's a catch, right? Like, that's an obvious thing you would think, right? That most people know, like, okay, if I'm taking all of this money, this is basically a transaction. You have a request. You're not going to invest your money into something and then I'm just going to do what I will, right? I'm going to just do what I want, how I want to do it, put it where I want. So it's very obvious that his largest turning point has gotten and is because obviously there were people that were pushing a certain agenda, pushing for certain things to be said, done, implemented, monies here, partnering there. And so all of that makes perfect sense to me. And so again, as I said before, we like to say that, most of us would like to think that, Charlie Kirk was so innocent. He maybe didn't know what was going on, all of the things, but he played the game, you all. He really played the game. And I met Charlie Kirk. I actually worked with him very, very seldomly back a few years ago. But and he came across as a very great guy and all of the things, but we have to know that he was taking this money from folks, and folks, are very clear on their intention. They're not going to write these large checks, you all, and not have obvious agendas. Okay. And so I really want to say that, it's looking as though he knew what he needed to do and that he was being used and put before the people, as this gentleman says, as a puppet, right? Just being the face to spread his brand and spread their ideologies, right? And so ultimately he defaulted. Ultimately he decided that what they were pushing, what they were describing, what they wanted him to do and say and get behind, he ultimately started having his own mind. He ultimately started saying, listen, I don't want to do these things. I don't want to promote this. This doesn't align with maybe what I believe or what I'm feeling. It doesn't add up. This is not going to, put America in the right direction. And so I thank God for that, him taking a stand in that regards. But again, when you start taking, you start having business deals with the devil, it's hard to start, backtracking, right? It's hard to start saying, you know what, never mind. No, never mind. Take your check. But it's hard. You're now in deep. Right? You've already signed the contract. So now you are going to be obligated to give an answer or else, right? Or else. And then also I'm thinking about Erika Kirk and how he married this woman. Did he know about what her background was about? And I'm going in line in sync with the Candace Owens podcast, as many of us are watching. Most of us are watching. She's the #1 podcast right now. And we're looking at the background of this woman. And I'm wondering to myself, how much of this did Charlie Kirk know? Did he know any of this? Of course, he knew some of this. Maybe he knew more than we want to probably give him credit for, because again, we want to paint him in this innocent light because of what happened to him. But again, this lady, this chick is like connected with human traffickers and pedophiles. How much of that did he know? Right? I mean, you're sleeping with this woman, you're having children. Most of us that are married, we understand that, okay, you're living with someone, there are going to be red flags, there are going to be indicators, as this gentleman in the video describes, that she's the one, talking to the donor. She's talking to the billionaire. She's creating the event. She's getting the dinners together. So he knew this, right? So again, how much of this can we really just say, oh, poor Charlie, Can we keep still screaming that? It's like, yeah, you were smart enough to look into this girl. You were smart enough to know the background. You were smart enough to know when people's writing large checks that they're going to openly want something from you. And it wouldn't be minute. And not only that, with Erika Kirk, obviously not the grieving widow, obviously not the person that really didn't know that Charlie Kirk was going to be assassinated, with her going around, first of all, within 48 hours, 24 hours, she's posting his body that's in a casket and her pretending that she is grieving over his body, right? That nonsense. And then before anybody could really FBI or anybody could really hold a shooter accountable, she comes out and just forgives the guy, of course, because she's using all of her religious ways and her religious training that she's been taught, right? Because again, she likes to play on the heartstrings of those that are, believers in the faith, right? And that we, they've learned that we are spirits, right? We're humans, but we are operating spirits. And so they like to tug on that. And how do you tug on that? You utilize faith, antics. You talk about God, you talk about the Lord, you talk about prayer, you talk about all these religious labels and such and religious terms. And so she uses this every chance she get. You can't ask the girl, was she going to get to lunch? And she always got to bring God into it. Oh, God told me to go get something, go get some fries and something. Like, she's always utilizing a bunch of church religious lingo. And so here she is giving some random guy that we don't even know much about at first. Oh, I forgive him. And she goes into this, you all know, the famous, crying, ugly cry. And we're all, just taken back, like, oh my God, blown away, right? Because why? She's just, I forgive him, because that's one of the major principles of being a believer, right? Is to forgive. And so she doesn't ask any questions. She goes on this media blitz of promoting his book, this so-called last book that he was writing, that I don't believe he wrote. I believe it was completely written by somebody else, some billionaire, AI, you name one. And she does this foolishness that most of us are seeing crystal clear. Like, this is completely utter nonsense. Something's wrong with this picture. And so, of course, you're called crazy because she's a grieving widow and everybody grieves differently. And so you're just supposed to, support whatever it is she's doing, whether it makes sense or not, because it's just her doing it. And so you don't know what it's like. And so you don't know how you would respond, and all of the other nonsense that people get in the comments and argue about. What does this girl have to gain? Why is this girl in the office within days, right? They have a pre-recorded Zoom call of her. Why is she immediately in the limelight? Why are there sparklers going off? Why is she saying his memorial is the greatest event in centuries? Listen, just on and on and on and on and on. And you all know what I'm talking about, because you probably watched the Candace podcast as well. If not, go catch yourself up. There's so much inconsistencies and innuendos within this story. And so for this gentleman to come out and really give us like a brief synopsis of what really more than likely is taking place, that she just climbing to the top, taking his role, doing what she wants to do. You got people at Turning Point saying things are different, things are not in the direction. You had the Turning Point Arkansas chapter pull out just the other week, stating that they no longer want to be affiliated. And these were not just some fly-by-nights. These were people that Charlie was involved with. The gentleman that was the president or person in charge, chairman of the Arkansas chapter, he was on the Charlie Kirk show. He was invited to the Hamptons meeting, the infamous Hamptons meeting that took place in July of last year. So these are people that are really familiar with Charlie and what his direction and his drive and his goals were. And so they're now stating they're pulling out because they don't know what's happening here. This is not who Charlie is, and everything they do as far as the board of Turning Point, they try to say, oh, Charlie would want this. They're just using the ghost of Charlie to just ultimately, push through their schemes and propaganda. And so I keep going back to the question of how much of this did Charlie know? How much did he really know? Was he as innocent as a lot of us would like to think? And why didn't he speak up sooner? Why didn't he expose sooner? There's so many things you can ask at this point. I just want us to know and pay attention to that. A lot of this is not what it seems. It's not what is presented. It's not real, right? A lot of this is fake and made up, and things are just not as it seems. And I'm realizing that more and more and more as I read the Word of God, as I'm hearing the various evidence that's coming forth, as the world continues to investigate what really happened to Charlie Kirk. I'm just recognizing that day by day, because I'm just really asking the Lord to reveal and show me what's going on. Give me insight. Help me to further have clarity in this area, in that area, and not have any loyalty to anyone. I'm noticing a lot of us, we want to have loyalty to a party. We want to have loyalty to a person. We don't want to criticize them if they do wrong. We don't need to have any loyalty to anyone but the Lord Jesus Christ. That is it. He is the only perfect one. He's the only perfect man. So it's like, how can we, allow these certain things, that apparent things to happen, and then we don't take a stand to speak out against it. We don't take a stand to criticize it and ask questions. We want to have loyalty to these individuals, but they're tainted. They are full of flaws, just like you and I. And so again, as much as I support Candace in this investigation, the moment she starts potentially becoming dysfunctional or glitching or showing any form of being bought, she out of there. I'm going to criticize any and everybody because I truly don't believe that, just like the Bible says, every man has his price and everyone has been given a measure of faith. All right. And so that typically means that when you have a certain measure of faith, it's ultimately how you're going to believe and how you're going to assess things in this world. All right. And so if you have a little amount of faith, you have just, where you just are religious and you just believe in just going to church and then you put the Bible up, you pull it up on the shelf and you're like, okay, that's it. And that's all. You just believe in maybe looking at and criticizing other people instead of examining yourself. And you just deem that everybody that is under this particular party is good and everybody else over there is bad. Like if you have all of that type of thinking, then ultimately you're going to miss out on the bigger picture. You really will. So I really want you all to just, as believers, right? As believers, are people that are just people of principle, to really make sure you're assessing each and every person and don't hold fast to anyone too closely at all. My pastor used to say, never have anybody so close to you can't swing. In other words, you can't swing them off, right? You don't want to be so committed and so loyal to any particular person. I don't care who they are and what they say, because we're all individuals. We all can mess up, make mistakes. Some of us can be bought for the right price. And so I just want us to just be made aware of that and not get so caught up in defending people that don't even know we exist. All right. You all let me know what your thoughts are. What are you thinking? What is your reaction to this video? What have been some questions you've had that Erika will not obviously come forth and answer to the public? What are some of the things that you have seen that really has caused you to pause and wonder what's really going on? Let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next one.
God knows 31 reasons you were called to be a woman of God, virtuous woman he needs. God knows 31